The absurdity of the far right, Suella Braverman's bit, and she would probably be considered a bit of a moderate in that group. It's a very small group of ideologues. They believe that immigration is where the next election should be fought. They might as well go and campaign in Albania, uh, or in Syria, Lebanon, Libya, and I'm sure you'll see Mr. Farage stomping around the coast of Brighton with his binoculars out. And that's before Mr. Farage has even signalled that he's going to come back into the Tory fold or stand for election with Mr. Tice. The idea that immigration is the best focus is absurd, given the fact that the only party that can be held responsible for an increase in legal and what the far right call illegal migration is the party currently in power, the party which is trying to get back into power at the end of this year. So the Conservative Party will be held to be a disgrace, will be signalled to be a disgrace, and the far right, the Suella Bravermans, think that that is the ideal subject on which to appeal to voters. It's like polishing the block before sticking your head on it. It seems utterly, utterly absurd. The practical points of reducing immigration. Somebody said to me that the problem of the NHS was not about Brexit. But the problem about the NHS is that in the years immediately before the referendum, in the years immediately following the referendum, so many of the nurses and the people dealing with anaesthetics and so on, particularly the support workers in hospitals and in the NHS, went back to Europe. And it's been very difficult getting people to replace them. Nurses went back to Europe. And it's not just because you can say, oh, well, no. There's these protected industries. The NHS is one of them. You don't have to be earning £30,000 in order to come here on a visa. You can just come here because we need you. Yeah. Well, that's the person. That's one part of the family. The other part of the family also has to find employment, and they may not be working for the NHS, and that really is the problem. And the children. What about the children? The people who champion the idea that Brexit has not dealt a blow to the NHS are living in some sort of cloud cuckoo land. It has dealt a blow to the NHS. It didn't need to deal a blow to the NHS, but the NHS it didn't need to deal a blow to the NHS, but the Brexit was so mismanaged once it had been voted for. In the run-up to Brexit, it was mismanaged. In the follow-up from that and the implementation of Brexit, it was appallingly mismanaged. And people were fleeing the country in thousands, in terror. And still, they haven't got it right. So and indeed, the small boats and the so-called illegal migrants are a consequence of Lord Frost failing to negotiate to replace the Dublin III Protocol, which was an essential part of controlling immigration and working together with our neighbours. Not only in that process does Britain become an ideal and clear destination, but equally, because it's unregulated, but equally, we also lose access to the police documentation of the people who are travelling across Europe. So we don't know who they are. And that's all down to Lord Frost's stupidity. So to run an election on the one particular part of the government initiative dominated by Brexit, which it has got so fundamentally wrong, is literally to surrender the election to an opposition party, and pretty well to concede that the Conservatives will not be in power for a generation, if ever again. I think the likelihood is that the Conservative Party will fracture in opposition and will never be back. They will fracture in a way that even the Lib Dems didn't fracture. The Lib Dems just dwindled into insignificance and then tried very gamely to hitch a lift on a number of passing boats, illegal boats, and then it re-emerged as the Lib Dems, again with a very, very small number of people in Parliament. And I think that's what will happen to the Conservative Party. Maybe we will see a rise of something approximate to the Lib Dems, but we will also see a rise of a far-right party, which will not be the Conservatives, which will be something closer to reform, and which will be fairly aggressive. I don't think it will be in power. I think the chances are that the Labour Party will be in power for more than a decade, probably 2 decades, because there will be no opposition to speak of. The opposition will crumble. It doesn't matter what happens at the next election. It doesn't matter how narrow that majority is. The Suella Bravermans and the Priti Patels are determined to destroy what is left of the Conservative Party. For what purpose? So they can be leader of the opposition. There will be no leader of the opposition if the Conservative Party fractures enough. There will just be various opposition leaders. And they will take it in turns, I suppose, to ask questions.